3, 2, 1. Good evening, everybody. Pete Caliendo, Baseball Outside the Box. Thanks for joining us. This is a show that loves to interview baseball's best coaching minds who love the challenge of status quo. And we got one of the best in the business on the show today. We're excited. You're seeing on the screen, so you know exactly who it is. And a lot of coaches and players and parents around the world and in the U.S. know him. Thanks for joining us live on Facebook. If you got any questions on Facebook, just type them up in the comments section. And let me tell you, cannot be more excited than to have Jerry Weinstein. He's returning back. He was on the podcast first time on the YouTube channel, and we're excited to have him. You know what? If I went through his bio, we'd be here all night. But let me tell you, he's got major league experience. He's got minor league experience. He's one of the top college coaches in the country. He's basically the top coach in the planet, and not only a top coach, teacher, educator, but he's one of the nicest people when it comes to sharing information. He is outstanding, and he's brilliant, and he also loves to challenge you, so that's what makes this great. It's going to be a great challenge for me, so let me welcome Jerry to the show. Jerry, how you doing, my friend?
Doing well, Pete. Good to be here. Thank you.
Well, first of all, congratulations on the 2021 ABCA Lefty Gomez Award given to someone who has, helped baseball not only locally, nationally, but also around the world. So congratulations on one of the most prestigious awards in the world.
Thank you. Humbled to have received that.
Yeah, well, everybody knows you and they respect you, and I can't wait to get into our talk today. Basically, let's do this because I know you're in California right now, and we've all been locked down for a while now. What have you been doing to stay sharp yourself? Not maybe physically, because I know you work out a lot, but also mentally, and when it comes to getting better as a coach, because if there's one person in the world that gets better every day, that's you.
Well, up until the draft, I was doing a lot of evaluations of players on Synergy because we were not able to go out and see players. They weren't playing, so I did that. And primarily what I normally do after spring training is go out and see all the top catchers in the country. And I saw some of them before spring training, but I missed a lot of them. So I went on Synergy and I tried to do my best in evaluating them and line them up for our scouting director, and then looked at some other position players as well and weighed in on them, and then doing a lot of Zoom calls with player development, mostly with the catchers, but I sit in on the hitters on occasion and haven't been doing that as much now. And so my day is get up early, go to the beach, have my coffee, read the newspaper. My wife and I have a spot that we can isolate ourselves at this particular beach, and then come home, drop my wife off, and then go to the gym. And fortunately, our gym is open because they moved all the equipment outside. So I go work out, come home and eat lunch, and then get on the computer. And I've got a number of books I've been reading, but just doing a little research on the internet on different topics and looking at taking different courses. I did the Performance 108 stuff on pitching and hitting, and I've done a lot of stuff with Kyle Bodie and his stuff. And then now that we're starting to play again, I just sit down at my desk and watch 2 or 3 games a day while I get on my computer, and I have my phone set up on the screen. So if I see something that I want to capture, I'll just I've got an external on and off switch that I can turn my camera on and off, and so I'll pick stuff out and stuff that I kind of post on Twitter or I just keep for my files, and that's my day. And plus doing a fair amount of Zoom presentations like this one for my friends.
Absolutely, and love it. And thank you for being on the show with us, because I figured you got so many of them, and I see all your videos you put up on Twitter. We're going to get on the show notes. We're going to put all of Jerry's information so you can go check out his Twitter page. It's outstanding. His website, all the videos, the books that he has, just great stuff. Jerry, it's interesting when you're watching a ball game. I know you're looking for particular things. Are you analyzing the good and the bad?
Oh, absolutely. I generally do not post the bad. I don't like to do that unless I can put a positive spin on it. Mm. So, I just look for, just like in coaching, I think it's important to catch players doing things right. I mean, we can tell them 1,000 things that they're doing wrong or what they shouldn't do. And so most of the focus is on doing things what I think, in my opinion, are right from a development standpoint. And that's the stuff that I post.
Absolutely. What about, it'd be interesting to know, what about when you're on your Zoom with your catchers? Is it, are you evaluating something they're doing at home, or are you just going over certain fundamentals with them?
Both. More, I think what our catching coordinator, Mark Strittmeyer, who is outstanding, is doing right now is taking an inning or a partial inning and sending the players a scouting report on the pitcher that's pitching and the hitters that are coming up, and then going pitch by pitch from a pitch calling standpoint, which I think is a great exercise that everybody could do, and ask, hey, what are you going to throw here? Why are you going to throw it? And then they play the pitch, and then okay, what are you going to do now? And what the situation, what are some of the subtleties here based on them knowing the pitcher and the opposition.
Love it. And, what's interesting is we're going to talk about pitch calling. And one of the questions later on is going to be about, this is a great exercise. It sounds like for young kids, coaches with young players to do.
Oh, I think it's outstanding because a lot of them are challenged because most of the coaches call the pitches for the players and they don't get a chance to do it themselves. And then they never have a post-game review explaining to them why this pitch was called in this situation. And so I'm kind of working on an app where we develop an app with situations and then where players can weigh in. But I have a number of clinics next year that I'm doing, and one of my presentations is going to be send the people that sign up for the clinic a scouting report on the pitcher and a scouting report on the hitters, and then going through situations and weighing in, what do you think we should throw here, why, and me weighing in, and then spending a whole hour doing that, which I think will be valuable.
It'd be interesting. I was just thinking, because it just popped in my head when you were talking that, and not that I want to get into this right away, but I do want to ask you about, I've always looked at the guards that they're using, the arm guards, and they have the pitch situations, the catchers have them. Is that a benefit, or is that teaching guys not to remember anything and not to think on their own?
Not a big fan of that. I mean, if you're a catcher and you can't remember from one hitter to the next or on a particular day how we're going to pitch a particular guy, which, number one, is going to change based on how the guy pitched the last guy and what was the quality of his pitches and the quality of his command. I think a lot of those are also holding runner wristbands in terms of step-offs and quick sets and particular moves and so on and so forth, as opposed to necessarily scouting. It seems to me like outfielders should be able to position hitters without having a card in their pocket, and catchers should be able to remember or how they want to attack particular hitters, which is primarily based on the strength of the pitcher. But even if we're going strength against weakness, I should be able to tell. And it's a very liquid endeavor. When we talk about this, hopefully we can highlight some of that as we go along here. But I don't think, for me, I don't think it's necessary. But that's just me. Now, if you're using it like the colleges use it to call pitches from a random number generator, well, that's a little bit different. But that's not happening in professional baseball because the catchers and pitchers are calling their own game for the most part. But that's just my opinion.
No, that's interesting. And I asked that because, we had a show on long-term development, teaching young kids how to play the game on their own a little bit. If we start making everything, automatic, everybody's teaching them things constantly. I mean, they're not really learning the game at the younger levels on their own at all.
Well, the game is so fluid that you may have a scouting report, but it changes. It's all based on how the pitcher threw the last pitch and how the hitter reacts to it and where we think the hitter's going with his attention zone and a lot of other things that factor into it. And it's not an always or never environment. There's a lot of adaptation and adjustment that's going on from pitch to pitch. It's a one pitch at a time game.
Jerry, as you know, I mean, there's so much information. What's great about the game today is there's so much information out there, whether it's on social media, whether it's new young people coming up with, new ideas, open-minded, thinking outside that box. But also, how does Jerry figure out, you've been in the game a long time, and how does Jerry figure out when and how you make an adjustment in something, when you change something? An example later on, we'll get into it, from a regular stance to a one knee stance. How do you make that decision as a coach? What's the protocols you use, I guess, to help you make that change?
Well, for me, since I'm probably more experienced and have had more failures than successes than most out there, I just on face value, I look at it, and if I think it has merit, then I'm going to take it out and I'm going to try it. And I'm it may be with our players and it may be with, in a teaching environment, but I'm going to tell them, I say, hey, I'd like to try this. I'm not sure if it's going to work or not. I'm not sure it's going to work with you, but anything they do, even if I think it has value for a particular player, there's always a situation where I'm going to talk to them about this may or may not work. We're going to try it and let's see how it works and see how it works for you. Because again, there are no always or nevers. One technique doesn't work for every player. You have to find the sweet spot for every player and adapt to the individual differences of the player. And the caveat is always, hey, I'm not sure if this is going to work, but if you're okay with it, let's try it and see what happens. And so there is some spray gunning out there to see what sticks and some trial and error but I always default to the player, making him understand that I'm not sure if this is going to work or not, but I think it's worth trying it.
Great point. And, I'm thinking probably best place I would assume would be practice, before the season begins, but then there might be times you make that adjustment during the season.
Well, it depends. Depends how they're performing. If they're not getting outcome and it's not because they just haven't had enough reps or we just don't like what's happening, we may make a U-turn somewhere and make some adjustments. But again, that's got to be a total buy-in from your organization and players and coaches, knowing that, well, hey, we've gone 2 months here and you're swinging at 40% of the pitches outside the strike zone, and your swing and miss percentage is 36%. And we know your eyes are okay, but we're thinking about that. Maybe we try and make an adjustment here. But again, you can't change lanes too quickly. Just because they have one, because they want to do that. They want instant success, and
right.
Sometimes if you're going to deliver the baby, there's some labor pains involved. But after a certain period of time, then when you're working on the player's player plan, and that's something that we do in terms of building players' weaknesses or growth opportunities, and then maintaining their strengths. That it's a collaborative effort between the player and the coach.
Jerry, and speaking about that, with all the technology, obviously you guys have a huge advantage. You got a lot of technology at the big league level, whether it's statistics, videos, there's so much information. Is it much easier than at the big league level or at the higher levels to make those adjustments? Because, a young coach at the high school and travel ball, let's say, they don't have that advantage to be able to use all this information.
Well, it's both easier and it's harder. It's harder because you have to filter out a lot of noise because ultimately you got to make it as simple as possible, but not too simple.
Yeah.
And also, once players get to professional baseball, they're 15-year veterans of what they do, their mechanics or their routines and so on and so forth. Then that's their security blanket, and they're not ready to pivot on a dime immediately. And so you can't take their security blanket away from them. And so it's not as easy as it would sound, and it's not prudent to here's a guy that's, say, AA, AAA's been successful his whole career, and all of a sudden he's not having success, and now we're going to make a bunch of changes. sometimes that becomes, to the player, it's, the coach is panicking, and then they lose the concept of the value of process over performance. And sometimes you just have to wear it for a certain period of time until you've had enough reps to where you're good at what you're trying to do, or become better where you can get outcome.
And folks, we're going to get to the catching part in a second. Jerry's got some stuff to show us on screen. Don't forget, go to YouTube at Peter Caliendo. Really appreciate it. Just subscribe, and that just helps us get the show out, and you'll get 90+ shows already up there. Before we start with the catching, Jerry, one last thing, something that's happened a lot now that you see on social media, and I really wanted to address it because coaches can get a little confused. There's a lot of techniques changing. Now, that could be in catching, hitting, a lot of different things, philosophies. But remember, we've got a lot of different levels in the game. We've got what's called in-house, which is just your kids wanting to play, 10, 15, 20 games a year, parents coaching them. Then you got maybe travel ball. Then you go to freshmen in high school, then maybe high school baseball, then college. How do you, as a coach, you can't teach everybody the same. How do you determine a 10-year-old what he's going to work on? Let's just take, say, catching and a big league guy.
Well,
or vice versa.
Number one, the most important thing, especially for young players, is they retain their passion for the game. And they retain their passion for the game when two things happen. When you're positive and you create an enjoyable, positive environment where they're having fun, and even if the results aren't great, that they get positive reinforcements for their process or their effort or whatever it happens to be, without trying to turn 8 through 14-year-olds into big league players immediately. And sometimes they just, you want them coming back, you want them listening because they want to be there and they enjoy the environment. So creating a positive environment is really important. And then from a teaching standpoint, you have to adapt to each individual in terms of strength, mobility, aptitude, all those things that come into play relative to being able to perform. And so each individual is going to be a little bit different in that sense. And so let's say, for instance, here's one that's a growing trend in professional baseball now. If you watch a game today, you're going to see the catcher down on a knee at least 50% of the time, and maybe even more. Some catchers with runner on third base and then winning run on third, they're on a knee. In a running situation, they're on a knee. And so how do we handle this with young guys? Well, this is one thing for me with young players who don't have strength and don't have mobility and lack the balance that it takes to be in a two-point stance. This is one of those situations where that one knee stance probably is a good starting point in teaching. And the same thing is true, say, for pitchers. Young pitchers, for me, I'd start them all out of the stretch. And out of the stretch, it's a lot simpler. There's fewer moving parts, and it'll really improve their arm action. So you've got to find the things that are most adaptable to the level of play and the individuals in that level. And you're going to have two 12-year-olds. One guy's going to have to shave twice a day, and the other guy has no hair on his body whatsoever. So the maturity factors also comes into play as well as aptitude and a lot of other things. But just going back to the catching piece, and I think the one knee stance is a great starting point in terms of teaching young catchers how to receive.
And I know you're going to show some stuff. And before we show some video or slides here, what about the coach that says, from the one knee, he's got to get up and throw the ball still, and it takes longer to get up? I've heard that before. Well,
having done it a lot with our pro players, I can tell you that's probably not the case. But again, it's very individualized. Some guys, they can't do it. And
right.
Some guys can do it. I said what it gets down to, especially with professional players, we find the stance that's best for the situation. If the pitch is the most important thing, then we put him in the stance where he's going to get the most strikes called. If throwing's the situation, we'll put him in the stance where the priority is to put him in the best position to throw people out. If blocking's the number one key, then we put them in the stance that gives them the best chance to block a breaking ball in the dirt. But we're finding that out of the one knee stance, whether it's right knee down, left knee down, more of a kickstand stance or less of a kickstand stance or a modified one knee stance, and I'll show you those, that we're finding that catchers can do all three if they get enough reps out of that particular stance.
Interesting. Love it. And let's get right to it then. Let's get to the slides. We'll start with that, and then we'll go into the questions.
You have all my contact information here, so anybody that needs to get a hold of me, feel free to call me anytime. I got a lot of free time. Answer questions. And I'm just going to kind of cherry. This is a PowerPoint that probably takes an hour and a half, and I'm just going to kind of cherry pick a few things out of this. But I want you to remember that this is a buffet. Take only what you want. You're not going to eat everything off this buffet. And these are just my opinions based on making lots of mistakes and, trial and error, finding things that work. But again, it's very individualized. I'm not going to talk about specifics, but athleticism is really important. But let's just talk about a straw ball. That's a pitch that could be a strike or could be a ball. We're as a catcher, one of the things that we're charged with as far as job description is make sure that every pitch that's a strike is called a strike. Now, these are pitches that could be a strike, could be a ball, depending upon how you catch the ball. Baseball savant calls them shadow pitches, but any pitch on the corners of the plate, and you notice I put up there, the plate is 22 inches wide. Mm-hmm. The actual plate is only 17 inches wide, but the ball is 2.5 inches in diameter, and so you add a ball's width on either side because the ball is touching the white of the plate. So you add another 5 inches. So the plate is actually 22 inches wide. Any fastball at the hollow of the knees, any fastball midway between the belt and the shoulders, any breaking pitch at the knees, or any breaking pitch at the belt. So those are kind of those marginal pitches that could be a strike or could be a ball, depending upon how you receive it. Now, the umpires are right 90% of the time. They're the best in the world. And I think it's more of getting this pitch called a strike because in reality it is a strike as opposed to a ball based on the way we catch the ball. Because the reality is that umpires are going to call strikes, balls before they call balls strikes. Balls that are out of the strike zone don't get called strikes very often. I think the Major League average last year was like 90%. They got 90% right. And just really quick here, strike is any pitch where any part of the ball passes through any part of the strike zone. But the reality is, and this is from a technique standpoint, why I think it's important to catch the ball up to the plate, a higher percentage of balls that pass through the strike zone at the front of the plate are called strikes. And lower percentage of strikes are called on balls that don't hit the front of the plate in the strike zone, but deeper in the strike zone. The best chance for a pitch to be called a strike is for it to pass the front edge of the plate as a strike and stay in the strike zone for half the time spent over the plate. One thing you'll see, the count will determine the width and breadth of the strike zone. Usually when the hitter's ahead in the count, the strike zone gets tighter. When hitters are behind in the count, when hitters are ahead in the count, like 2-0, 3-1, the strike zone gets bigger. And when pitchers are behind in the count, 2-0, 3-1, the strike zone gets bigger. But the reality is that when pitchers hit the catcher's target, a high percentage of the time, it gets called a strike, no matter where it is, wherever you set up, unless you're way out of the zone.
Jerry, is it fair to say, I guess the different stances that have also been created recently also has to do with giving the umpire a better view?
100%. And I'll show you some stats that I had Inside Edge do for me, comparing guys in a 2-point stance and a 3-point stance. I call the one knee stance 3-point because you got knee, foot, and knee connected with the ground. The 2-point traditional stance, you just have 2 feet on the ground. But the reality is that offense can change greatly by count. So if you get a close pitch, that's why people talk about that 1-1 count, and from 1-1 to 2-1, the OPS changes as opposed from 1-1 to 1-2. But the biggest swing count is that 2-1 pitch, 2-1 to 3-1 or 2-1 to 2-2. It's 821 points of OPS, and
Wow.
so that every count is a little different value. Again, like I said before, we want to make sure that every strike is called a strike. For every additional strike, you save 14/100ths of a run over the course of a big. And the thing why receiving is getting so much play right now is during the course of a season, the catcher's going to catch upwards of 10,000 pitches, and every count has a different value. A ball or a strike with a 2-strike count or a 3-ball count are a lot different. Like a 3-2 pitch that becomes a strike, or a 3-2 pitch that becomes a ball, is almost 0.6 of a run. And you add them up over the course of a season, where there are a lot of those types of situations that it adds up to runs. And over the course of a season, every 10 runs that you save, somewhere between 8 to 10 runs, is a major league win. So, and I'll give you some stats as we move on here a little bit, but just some mechanical thoughts on receiving, getting away from the statistical side, catching the ball firm. But again, it's in one sense it's like a gymnast sticking a landing, but now catchers are catching the ball, and if it's off the plate or in that shadow zone or in that strip ball zone, they're moving the ball into the strike zone, subtly moving the ball into the strike zone. Mm-hmm. We want to catch the ball in the top of the glove between your index finger and your middle finger and your thumb. And basically, our first contact, even if you funnel the ball back into your body, first contact is at extension. And then if it's a strike, the catchers generally move it subtly, even if it's a strike, just so that the umpire doesn't get to see. Every time the ball's in a shadow area or a strip ball, they move their glove. And so then the umpire, well, he's moving his glove, it's probably out. But ideally what you want the umpire to see, not the glove moving, but where the glove stops moving. So we'd like to have it to be a one-piece move. Just some basic stuff there.
Jerry, just real quick on that, I've been watching a lot of video on TV with the catchers, and, you mentioned a key word there, because I remember in the old days, they used to catch it and move it, we used to tell the catcher, listen, that's not going to help you if you move it like that, because I know you're moving your glove. But you said the word subtle. That's important, because I'm watching some big league guys. They're not as subtle all the time.
And they're still getting them called strikes, because
right.
What is happening is the umpires are being evaluated with StatCast, and now it'll be Hawkeye. And they're basically, ideally, they're just trying to get, their job is to get every strike called a strike, every ball called a ball. They have the same job as the catcher. So in essence, the catcher and the umpire are working towards the same goal, and they're being evaluated. Their strike ball process is being evaluated every day, and then they look at the videos, and they look at the based on the Hawkeye or the StatCast. They say, I call that ball a ball, but in reality, it was a strike. Now, the Toyota strike zone you're seeing on the television is not necessarily the data that they're getting. Their data is a lot more refined than that, based on the new technology.
And on top of it, you guys, sorry to interrupt, but you guys are also studying the umpires and knowing what position. I mean, you may get into that, but the position they're taking and where they're taking it on the catcher.
No question. I don't know if I had it. I don't have it in here. I have it in another slide. But we have a scouting report on the umpires. We know where the umpires will expand and where they'll contract, and based. I mean, I was looking at a game the other day. We were playing. Let's see. We were playing Texas Rangers, and against left-handed hitters, this particular umpire was giving pitchers 2 to 3 ball whiffs off the plate on balls away, and Drew Butera, our catcher, was sitting out there, and he just catch the ball and hold it there, and he was getting a fair number of strikes. Now, they were close, but he wasn't moving pitches there because he knew that they would be called strikes, and he didn't want to do anything to distract that umpire. And again, you're always having an ongoing conversation with that umpire in terms of, am I moving too much? Am I too low? Am I holding the ball too long? Can you see it all right? And not to the point where you're going to get bullied into a setup that's not good for your pitcher, because always you're setting up based on the needs of your pitcher. But there's just a lot of things that you learn by experiences in terms of, and you talked about taking obvious balls and turning them into strikes. You don't want to do that. But catching very quiet, letting the ball sit, minimal amount of movement, whether you catch the ball up to the plate at extension and subtly move the ball into the strike zone at extension, or that you funnel the ball back into the midline of your body, which happens on occasion. Now, this is not, I don't know how well you can see this slide. This comes from Baseball Savant. Mm-hmm. And those zones 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19 are all balls on the fringes of the plate. And the league average on those pitches is 48%. Now, Austin Hedges was the best in baseball last year, and his percentage was 53%. He got 53% of those marginal pitches called strike. Now, during the course of a season, in a game, you're going to have anywhere from 9 to 18 balls. And so that's going to really add up. The average catcher gets about 50%, and the guys that are the better guys are getting more than 50%. And this is just a schematic here of funneling the ball back to the middle of the plate. This is an old slide, but you can see in the 2010 season, this is Jonathan LaCroix to Jason Varitek. And LaCroix saved 41 runs. And Varitek lost 16 runs. So the difference there is 57 runs, and that is probably 6 wins. So if LaCroix caught for Boston on this particular year, and Varitek caught for, I'm assuming it was Milwaukee, that Boston would have won 6 more games, and Milwaukee would have lost 6 more games. And again, when you talk about a win, if you take WAR, for example, the cost of a win is somewhere between $7 and $9 million. So based on just the receiving piece, LaCroix was worth close to $40 million. Now, I don't think he was making 40.
I'll bet the agents love that one. You just gave them a bunch of information when it comes to next negotiation.
This is just that RAA is runs above average. And you can see LaCroix up there and Chris Stewart and Yadier. And here's one that would be easy for the amateur coaches to use. It's called strike ball ratio. And the OOZ are strikes out of the strike zone. Now, a lot of this is umpire related. Sometimes you get, amateur umpires, they're postmen and barbers and teachers and whatever. They're not professional umpires. And at different levels, the zones are going to be bigger or stronger, but the ratio between out of the zone strikes, OOZ, and in zone balls, the better guys in the big leagues are, the major league average is 2.95. So it's like 3 times. For every 3 balls outside the strike zone, they lose 1 ball inside the strike zone, called a ball, either because the umpire missed it or they caught it poorly or something. And so you'd like to keep that 3-to-1 ratio. And the better guys, you can see, on this particular year, we're in the 4 to 5 range. So just sitting on the side of the catcher and just watching and just subjectively saying, oh, that was a strike, that was a ball, was it called a strike or was it called a ball? It gives them a ratio. I'm gonna go through these pretty rapidly, and just kind of cherry pick some. And this is pretty aggressive punch at the ball, but you can see he's catching. This is a strike ball and catching the ball up to the plate. But one thing that you should note, I'm gonna turn can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. You're good.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
No?
Yep.
All right. I was going to turn the sound.
Oh, that might
Down
turn
a
this.
little bit on that. But you can see his setup there. He's kind of angled a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that little angled setup allows the umpire to have a very wide lane to see this pitch. And he just kind of lets that ball sit long enough where the umpire can make a decision. And
Jerry, with a runner on, that also gives him a little bit advantage of the throwing, right? When he's at an angle.
You have to be careful with a runner on base of letting the ball sit too long, because then you're very susceptible to delay steal. So you have to find the sweet spot there. It's kind of somewhere between. And again, if that guy's going, you're going to know immediately because he's going the pitcher's first move. So you'll know that you wouldn't let, but you need to be careful on delay steal. It's not a problem on straight steal, but it is on delay if you let pitches sit and lose the runner at first base, and he can beat you on delay. This is a real good one on LaCroix. This is Matt Garza, and Matt Garza throws basically a scud up there. He misses his target by a big margin, but LaCroix extends to catch this ball on the inside part of the. Got to go back here. All right, here we go.
Started the season without a walk. He had 114 plate appearances.
You know what? Let me go back. Okay.
On Baseball
All
Reference.
right, here we go.
Maybe they call Chris Davis that in Baltimore, but his name's spelled with a C.
You can see how he framed the plate there and really caught that ball extended so the umpire. Now, it was a strike.
Maybe they call Chris Davis that in Baltimore, but
But
his name's
with that
spelled
big
with a C.
miss, this normally doesn't get called a strike.
Right. Wow.
Started the season.
Yeah, it's a
I'm
little.
just kind of
Zoom
work
puts it
through.
in slow motion a little bit.
This is Chris Stewart, and you can see just kind of a little lift. He works underneath the ball. I say this is kind of like picking Kleenex out of a Kleenex box.
Huh.
Here, this is a guy I've had a lot of experience with. This is Dustin Garneau. He's catching for the Astros now, and he's got a little different technique, and he kind of rolls his. And he kind of rolls his glove. He kind of rolls his thumb up. This is a low mid pitch, and you can see that little glove turn.
Mm-hmm.
And what he does, he takes the low ball and he just kind of rolls it up, and that glove is like 12 inches in diameter, so it looks 12 inches higher than it really was. Here's LaCroix again.
When he first came up, he had a tough time with that pitch. One name to throw strikes.
And the biggest takeaway there is how he let that ball sit and let the umpire see it. He didn't bounce up in a hurry and throw the ball to third base, because if the umpire is unsure, he's going to call a strike a ball before he calls the ball a strike.
Yeah, and Jerry, most of the umpires, you think, are they calling? I mean, they're calling that pitch before. I mean, in their minds, before it hits the glove.
Yes, but the time every umpire has, and that's a great question, because every umpire has a little different strike calling tempo.
Yeah.
And so you have to figure out what the strike calling tempo is of that umpire.
Wow. Interesting.
Lester, and his only start against them last year, 11-4 at Seattle on July 8th.
And you can see reaching out and pulling that back in very subtly.
Last year, 11-4 at Seattle.
Jerry, one of the areas too, as you're talking about this, the glove, you're going to leave the glove out there. You don't want to give in, do you?
Well, it depends. Some catchers, there's two types of catchers in today's game. Some guys are extenders and meters and catch the ball to the plate and move the ball with more or less an extended arm with their deltoid. And some guys catch that ball and flex it back in. Guys like Ryan Cienko, that's what he teaches, and very successfully, because he's had some really good catchers. So that's why you have to have a pretty large toolbox, so you can find out what works best for each catcher. Now this is a really interesting one. I think this is Boyd. This is a big miss, and you can see how still he was on that one. and he didn't rotate his shoulders and lose contact with the umpire to catch it. But that's a fairly big target miss.
You know, and then, folks, interesting because, I mean, if someone was to ask you the most important part of catching, I guess it's going to be receiving, because this is where you win all the games.
Without a doubt. Receiving, you save, for instance, on runs saved, and I had a chart there. I don't know if I went by it or not. I'll try and find it. But you'll save, the best catchers will say, and the gap between catchers is getting closer now, because the catching coaches, both on the amateur level and on the big league level, are getting better and better at teaching receiving, and they're spending more and more time on receiving. But if you broke it down on runs saved, the top guy last year was Hedges, 27 runs saved receiving. The top guy in blocking, I'm not sure who it was, but it was like 1.1 from the average.
Wow.
And the top guy throwing was about 3 runs saved. So the receiving piece is many, 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 many times more important than the blocking or throwing piece, because there's just so many more pitches. There's so many more opportunities to save strikes or lose strikes than there are blocks that are meaningful or throwing. So
wow. And no wonder all this work is going into this. Obviously, there's a lot of research, a lot of work behind this, you know, and sadly, because it's going to happen whether people like it or not, I don't know, maybe in 4 or 5 years, I don't know when, but when the electronic strike zone comes in, all this stuff's going to be tossed out the window.
yes, it is, but I think pitchers are not going to accept guys catching the ball sloppy behind the plate. I don't think that's going to happen. But also, I think that unless they really tune up the robotic strike zone, because if you go by the rule book, if a ball touches the front part of the plate, a guy throws a down or curveball that hits a guy at the hollow of a guy's knees or just at the guy's knees at the front of the plate, depending upon where he's standing, and by the time it gets to his hitting zone, it's probably going to be in the dirt, and it's going to be called a strike. And so the strike zones are, and I think the commissioner, and I like the commissioner, by the way, I think he's trying to inject, he wants more offense in the game. And I think that the robotic strike zone is going to take offense away from the game. I don't like appeals. I think it slows the game down. And I think it takes some of the personality out of the game when guys, you know, came out and argued and things like that. I thought that was great theater for the fans. And yeah, maybe they miss a couple calls here and there, but now these ones where a guy is a 1/16 of an inch up over the base or has the play beat, and the guy hits him with the tip of his, you know, basically touches him, and now all of a sudden on appeal they're out. I just don't like that personally. Here's some one knee stuff, just six different setups. The one in the middle there is on the left hand side is a left knee kickstand, and then kind of above it is a modified kickstand, and then just a regular one knee stance, and then with the left knee as well. And here was the little study. I asked the inside edge guys to do a little study on catchers, and they looked at 54 catchers that had at least 1,000 pitches in a one knee stance, and they found differences in over 40% of the catchers, and 15 were better from one knee. And I think that as guys catch more and more out of one knee, that they'll get better and better at it, and they'll be better out of it. And especially young guys where they have trouble with balance and strength and getting into a stance, and they fall out of their stance, and they get tired easily. This one knee stance will allow them to concentrate on their receiving.
Jerry, some of these stances also is going to save longevity as far as catchers catching longer, possibly.
Possibly. We haven't studied that, but we'll have to see. This is Austin Hedges' heat map. And you can see this is above the average guy. All the red ones, he's above the average guy in baseball, and he catches the ball pretty much all over the zone better than everybody. And here's this just happens to be, here's a one knee stance, high ball. But I'm going to show you This is an interesting slide. There are 10 pitches here, and I'm just going to run it straight through. Based on probabilities, and we have stats on everything. All these pitches are 5% of the time they're called strikes. All 10 of these pitches were called strikes for Austin Hedges while he was catching, and you're going to see him on one knee and not on one knee. Some of them are high, some of them are low. But I'm just going to run it through. But keep in mind that 95% of the time, all these pitches were called balls, and all of these pitches were called strikes. And you can see the glove action there. And you can see his glove breaks and goes this to high ball. And you see he gets on top of that high ball. That's a high breaking ball.
Same stance. Yeah.
This one's a little bit different, but you can see where this one he fell out of his stance and went down to his knee, and he brought his hands down to the ground before, so he could work underneath the ball and up to it.
Yeah, and as he goes down, that gives the umpire a better opportunity also.
Well, yes, and what the biggest thing is, it helps him work up through the ball that's down rather than pushing it down, trying to pick it back up. You're seeing a lot of catchers now start with their glove down on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Jerry, as that knee starts to come down, I mean, the thing that young players need to realize, the glove can't start going down because you said you want to work from down up.
Right. What my point is that I would start the glove on the ground, because more and more the pitchers are not using the glove for a target.
Really?
No, we talked to our pitchers in spring training, and out of all our pitchers in spring training, 80% of them said they didn't care where the glove was. They were using something other than the glove for their target. And if that helped the catcher get more strikes for him, then they were all in.
That's great to know.
You can see he's starting his glove up and then dropping it down. You can see that he's got a variety of stances.
Have most of the pitchers tell you where they are looking? Just the zone, that area?
Well, they're looking at every pitcher's a little bit different. Depending upon, because the target, one thing that we need to recognize as catchers, that the target is not, the target is not where we want the ball to start. It's where we want the ball to finish.
Mm-hmm. So the catcher wants to be at the spot where it finishes before it gets there. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. If the pitcher starts the ball where he wants it to finish at the glove, it's probably going to finish out of the strike zone. So a lot of times as a catcher, I have to give my target and knowing each pitcher being a little bit different, because if the pitcher's using the finishing point as the glove, then his point of aim, his eyes are going to be looking somewhere else. Mm. Or if he's using the glove, the target as a starting point, then he's looking at the target. Wow. And that's going to change with breaking balls too. It changes pitcher by pitcher and with breaking balls and fastballs. Wow. Jerry, so while you're doing that, Ted Dorner asks, what do catchers want pitchers to know or do better? What do catchers want pitchers to do better? Hit their target. That's true.
Probably more.
I'm just kind of.
And Ted, while he's doing that, as Jerry talked about, when you're receiving the ball really well, you're going to get a lot more strikes. So catchers can really help your pitchers a great deal by understanding all this and working on it.
This is something that we spent a lot of time with we did have instructional league this year, so we spent a lot of time with our catchers on pocket awareness. And I'm going to show you, and this is with an Edgertronic, so this is over 1,000 frames a second. On the left, you're going to see the ball coming. I think.
Yeah, there it goes.
Yeah.
Gloves moving. It goes extra slow with zoom.
And you can see where this ball, where we want to catch the ball and how secure it is. And really
Wow.
secure. On the right, you're going to see this one where the ball kind of ricochets. It's not clean. You see how the ball kicked. Now, so we're always working on pocket awareness because you can control the pitch a lot better when it hits in between your thumb, middle finger, and index finger. So
There we go. Go ahead.
I'm just going to show you a series of drills.
Yeah, just know that zoom goes slow sometimes if you're watching on Facebook.
You tell me when I can change this one.
Yeah, they're working. You're working. Are you working? Oh, there you go. Are those heavier balls? Lighter
Yeah,
balls?
2-pound balls.
Yep.
All right,
Great. Go ahead. Go ahead. That's the 2-pound ball.
Can you see this one?
Yep, 2 balls.
Yeah, and so this just makes him isolate the part of the glove that we want to catch the ball.
Awesome. Great teaching concept, boy. That is outstanding.
This is just a little mirror drill where we're working on glove action.
Which one's the hard, Jerry? Which one's the hardest pitch to catch, or is that vary with catchers?
Well, it varies with pitchers.
Pitcher.
That biting slider in the dirt or down low, it depends on, or that turbo sinker, that 98 miles an hour. And again, some catchers have trouble, and that's one of the things that we really look at with each catcher. We chart and find out what are the pitches that each individual catcher has issues with. This is just little small ball drills, and the key here is we're trying to keep our body quiet and use our hands on balls within the strike zone.
And people watching, so I mean, think about it. They're using this stuff for big league players. Definitely could use with young kids. Jerry, the last one was balance, coordination.
Yeah, on a Bosu ball.
Yep.
This is one we just started using that I like. This is it's a cloth frisbee. Let's see here.
So you're asking them to catch the frisbee.
Yeah, I'll get it. Well, doggone it. Pete, I don't know why this one's not playing. It's not playing on yours, is it?
No, but that's okay. When you're talking about throwing the frisbee, the idea is how you catching it, the same way you're catching a baseball.
Right. Yeah.
So you're training the right fingers.
Right. Let me try something here. Yeah, that wasn't good. You see that?
Yep. Jerry, since you're on that, also, there's going to be times where you see catchers, I mean, they're doing a lot of things one-handed. What about the other hand?
It depends. Where most guys in professional baseball are comfortable right now, they're putting their hand more or less, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
More or less inside their thigh, their right thigh. Now I'm okay with them putting their hand behind their calf or behind their ankle, and you can see that's what he's doing right here.
Yep.
Okay, let's go to this next one. This one is kettlebell receiving, and he's got a wristband here, Velcro and tubing, and then I've got a kettlebell tied to a 5-pound kettlebell. And then what's happening is every time when he picks his glove up to catch the ball, the kettlebell's going to swing, and the perturbation is going to make it that much tougher for him to get to where he needs to get to. So he's, it's just kind of a little overload situation.
Yeah, you got to work harder to get to that spot.
Right, because the kettlebell kind of swings you, so it helps you stabilize. Now this one, I don't know if you can see this one.
Yep, with the string.
Yeah, well, actually, it's Jaeger tubing.
Tubing.
And so, so we use that in front and behind and to either side. Sometimes if a guy has a lot of movement to his forehand side, we'll pull him to his forehand side, kind of feed the beast. I want to find. I'm going to go back and see if I can find.
So, Jerry, while you're doing that, so that's what you're trying to do there is change a movement, basically, to a correct movement.
Correct. That's right.
So you're using a Jaeger band. I remember in the old days, sometimes we used to do that with hitters, not knowing exactly what we were doing. But, a guy that was lunging too much, we'd put a elastical band around their waist to let them get that feel.
Pete, any questions on receiving? Because I'm going to jump into pitch calling a little bit.
No, for right now, let's go pitch calling because I think, Jerry, I think pitch calling is very important. That's one of the most difficult things, and I know at the big league level, you got so much information that I'm assuming makes it a little bit easier compared to your high school or travel team coach.
Right. But the number one priority, number one, there are no absolutes.
Good to know. That's good to know.
Hey, you got to throw this pitch and that. No, you don't. A lot of options. And the number one priority is to pitch the pitcher's strengths. And I tell the catcher, I said, hey, you have a great scouting report on the team we're playing today. You know them better than their own coach knows their team. And then option B would be, our pitcher better than he knows himself. Which scouting report would you rather have, the one on the team or the one on your pitcher? And overwhelmingly, it's more important to know your own guy rather than the other team. Now, more advanced pitchers can go strength against weakness, but most youth league pitchers and even a high percentage of big league pitchers, they pitch to their strength, even if it's the hitter's strength. Matter of fact, a lot of times, most of the time, you get hitters out with their strengths. You take Albert Pujols, who is probably not today, but has been the best fastball hitter of this generation. Pujols and Cabrera and Votto and guys like that. But Pujols is right at the top. And 50% of his outs are on fastballs. So you get hitters out with their pitch inside their swing zone and outside their solid contact zone. And there isn't just one pitch. You have a long option line of pitches. And the right pitch is the one that the pitcher has confidence in. It's better to throw the so-called wrong pitch the pitcher has confidence in than the so-called right pitch that's going to be thrown with doubt.
Jerry, question on that, and I have a question only because it came up on television. I'm curious about it. Someone had said on one of the experts was talking about that a lot of the elite pitchers, the top pitchers in the big leagues, they can throw their off-speed pitch in situations like 2-0 counts, full count, where a lot of guys can't do that, and that's what makes them that much better.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Okay.
I mean, having command of at least two pitches, and when I say command, I'm talking about 65% strikes minimum with each of those pitches that are separated by 10 plus miles an hour. And that's what separates the regular guy from the elite guys. The elite guys can pretty much throw any pitch in their arsenal at any count. So
and
they do not become predictable.
Jerry, especially under pressure situations, because when you're talking about full count and the bases loaded, that's a pressure situation.
Well, that's what makes you a big league pitcher, that you can throw all your pitches regardless of the situation. It's not, well, I can only get a breaking ball over when we're ahead 10-1.
Right.
Oh, we'll wait till we're ahead 10-1 before we put you in the game.
Yeah.
Okay, here's something that's important. I tell the pitchers and the catchers that it's kind of like you guys go to casino and gamble, and well, yeah, occasionally. I said, well, you're the house. Pretend you're, when we play baseball, the pitcher's the house. And what happens in the casino? The house always wins. And so take advantage of the rule of 68, which if you look in the big leagues, every game pretty much 32% of the time base runners get on base. 68% of the time that they hit the ball into fair territory, they're out. So contact is a good thing. Pitching away from contact or trying to be a perfect pitcher is probably not what you should be doing based on the odds that you have. Because even if they hit the ball hard, 48% of the time that balls are hit hard hit balls, high exit velocity that stay in the ballpark, hitters are out. So even if they hit the ball hard, the odds are in your favor.
Boy, and understanding these statistics really helps a pitcher because sometimes that fear factor of being in the zone too much, especially young pitchers, they don't want to. They want to nibble a little bit more than they do sometimes going at it. And one of the areas, I guess, Jerry, is pitching inside. Are we still emphasizing that? Guys pitching away more?
Well, 70% of the strikes in the big leagues are middle out, so that should answer your question.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, that's the number one thing, probably the number one deficiency in most pitchers, their inability to pitch inside, especially inside for strikes. And one of the problems is they never get a chance to work on it, especially in a game, because if they pitch inside and they're tentative and they hit guys and people get upset, then your guys get hit and you're playing an inter-squad game. And they were talking about the summer camp, that was going to be hard on the pitchers because they were reticent to pitch inside because they didn't want to hit their own guys. And so where do you really get a chance to work on it?
Wow.
So that becomes an issue. But pitching inside, we have unbelievable stats that show if you pitch inside early in the count, what effect it has on hitters later in the count. Not only that hitter, but the other 8 hitters that are standing on the top step and watching. And that opens up, because when good hitters go up there, if you can't pitch inside, they eliminate the inner half of the plate. So now they turn all those outside pitches into middle pitches because they've eliminated the fastball in, or you don't get your breaking ball over. They've eliminated the breaking balls. That's what hitters do. They watch the game and they say, what can I eliminate so that they can shrink the amount of strike zone that they have to cover? So being able to throw off-speed pitches for strikes, being able to pitch inside, outside, up and down, really important. Today's game is pretty much a north-south, front-back game. It's not much of an east-west game. The in and out stuff is less important than pitching up in the zone, because we found that spin rate will really, especially guys with high spin rates, have carry and hitters swing and miss at balls up. They haven't figured out how to get on plane with fastballs that have high spin rate up, and then front and back, because they can go front and back and aim for the middle of the plate, and if they miss by 11 inches, it's still in the strike zone. So there's a greater margin for error starting balls over the middle of the plate. But somewhere we're going to get back to pitching inside more effectively. And I think in watching games just recently, the first 4 or 5 games in this 60-game season, I see more fastballs inside. But you got to be able to do 2 things. You need to be able to pitch inside for strikes and inside off the plate. The biggest thing is, especially if you have a scouting report, we get so tied up into the sequence of pitches, and really your sequences should not be predetermined. It's all one pitch at a time. I throw this pitch, and then what I throw on the next pitch is determined by how I threw that pitch, how the hitter reacted to that pitch, and where I think the hitter's attention zone was going on the next pitch. So say, for example, I throw a breaking ball in the dirt, and the hitter has a real good take on that breaking ball in the dirt. What's my option to throw on the next pitch? Well, I could throw another breaking ball, because if I threw a poor breaking ball and the hitter will come off the breaking ball and definitely be committed to the fastball. I could throw a fastball depending upon whether he's strong in or out. I could go in or out, or I could throw a changeup. So there's a lot of factors depending upon how I threw the pitch. And certainly when I throw it, it's like when we play golf and we hit a ball out of bounds and we tee up another one or we get a mulligan, usually the second one's better. And that's the same thing with bad breaking balls or any bad pitch, because you get a chance to adjust. And I think what happens with young guys, they throw a bad pitch and they don't repeat it, so they never get a chance to make adjustments during the game.
Great point. Now, Jerry, does that, because you guys have meetings prior to games and you go over hitters, does that game plan change now?
Absolutely. And every pitcher, David Price never wanted to look at a scouting report. He said, I'm going to pitch to my strength and they'll adjust to me. That was John Wooden's philosophy at UCLA. We don't worry about the scouting report, boys. They're going to adjust to us.
Who's making the adjustment, the pitcher or the catcher now?
Well, hopefully both of them are, and that's one of the big problems now is, many pitchers will always defer to the catcher. They'll just follow his fingers. They'd follow him off a cliff if he walked.
Right. Some guys just are they like it that way, and that's the way they're always going to do it.
Yeah, and then they blame the guy for putting the wrong down. But the better guys, they take responsibility for what they're going to throw, and they determine what they're going to throw, and so they make a pitch determination based on that pitch they threw, the hitter, and what the situation is as well. You asked me before about scouting reports. This is a kind of a typical scouting report. This is on Jim Wolf. We knew with right-hand hitters on fastballs where he was going to expand, and breaking balls and with 2 strikes or changeup or other pitch. We knew where we could expand the zone. And then what we would do is keep I would keep a log on, particular umpires. High stance, big erratic zone, very poor timing, really delays some calls, hold the ball longer than usual, likes to call box. So we make our pitchers aware of that. They got to make sure and stop and stuff like that.
Interesting. Very interesting. Jerry, in that way you were talking about, and now I'll let you go on, but I just wanted to ask you on the hitters, how does that work with, some hitters are they like to stay away from the plate. Some are on top of the plate. So you're reading that also as a pitcher or catcher.
No question. That's one of the big scouting things. And for instance, does he start off or start on? Does he start with a square stance, an open stance, or a closed stance? Does he start with an open stance and stride closed? Does he stride straight? I'm not too concerned with his stance. What I'm concerned with is where his foot goes on his stride. So we have 3 numbers, okay? We've got 1 with the front foot, 1 would be close to the plate, 2 would be squared away, and 3 would be open. And the back foot would be close to the line, middle, back. So if a guy has a 3-1 in his stance, it'd be a closed stance. So his 3 would be away from the line, but his front foot, the 1 would be close to the line. And so we might say 3-1. I hope I'm not confusing people, but he might be a 3-1 setup, but a 3-3 stride, which means that he pulls off the plate. He's off the plate and he pulls off.
So the stride is the most important part.
Yeah, where he goes with his stride is important, but where he stands on the plate is important too, because the guys that are on top of the plate many times are more susceptible to balls in. You got to be quicker, or some guys stand on the plate because they're quick and they can't hit the ball away. So you have to, again, know your people. But again, we're going to pitch to the pitcher's strengths.
Right. Jerry, can you read some of this in batting practice too?
Not really.
No, so don't even waste your time watching.
No, I mean that doesn't mean you don't watch batting practice, but
swing plane or maybe.
Yeah, you can see swing plane, and you can see what guys are working on during batting practice. But everything changes when you don't know what the pitch is, and when the game speeds up. Batting practice is feel good time, and they're trying to break the furniture in the third deck, and everybody's comfortable, and it's a whole different thing when the scoreboard gets turned on. You need most of your information from game at bats.
Game speed.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
This is just a basic pitching plan. This is a plan that you can use for every pitcher on your team. A very basic plan that whether the guy throws hard or he doesn't throw hard, if he's got a breaking ball, whatever, it's just a basic goal plan. And we talk about treating the 0-0 pitch like a 3-2 pitch, because in the big leagues on 3-2, pitchers throw 80% strikes. Now, major league hitters only swing at 53% of the first pitches, and the batting average on first pitch strikes is incredibly low because, A, they don't swing at them, they swing and they hit it and they're out, or they pull it foul, or play it the other way foul. 93% of the first pitch strikes result in an out or an 0-1 count. And then throw one of the first two pitches for strikes, ideally the first pitch for a strike, but guys like Maddox like to nibble maybe with a fastball first pitch and then throw a changeup second pitch because he knew he could throw his changeup for a strike very high percentage of the time. But first pitch strikes gives you an 80% chance of throwing two of the first three for strikes, and first pitch ball, and it's only 30%. Ideally, we talk about on or out in 3 pitches. We want to go right after hitters, and goal is to throw 2 of the first 3 pitches for strikes. And all this means is throwing high percentage strike pitch or pitches to high percentage locations, and then paying close attention to those, that 1-1, 2-0, 2-1 pitch, which is a big swing pitch in terms of how OPS changes over based on a ball or a strike. And then ahead of the count, we tilt or double or put away. Tilting is going up and in to low and away. Doubling is maybe throwing 2 pitches in. And reversing is going low and away to up and in, or put away, or box, which just is to throw the ball in the box, anywhere in the box from mid-thigh to just below the hollow of the knee, or half box is throwing it inner half or outer half. And those are it's just a language of terminology that we use so that in our bullpens, when we're working on making pitches, we're working on, these are doubles that we use, or put away pitches, or get it over pitches. And these are the terminology that we move. So we're working on these types of techniques, which are strategies to get hitters out. Then we talk about the 2-2 pitch, treating it like a 3-2 pitch, but a lot of times guys will throw a very low percentage strike pitch to a low percentage location 2-2 pitch. We want to end the at-bat 2-2, and then creating uncomfortable at-bats by moving hitters' feet or pitching inside for strikes. And this is just some more data on 0-0 strikes. Now, 0-0 hitters have pretty good stats, 0-0, but it's the frequency is very low in terms of this happening, because most of the time, 93% of the time, they don't put the ball in play for a hit. The biggest one for me here is that the bottom one, that 69% of strikeouts occur after a first pitch strike. That doesn't mean that every time you throw a first pitch strike, you're going to strike the guy out. But when you do, it's as a result of the first pitch being a strike, and 70% of base on balls occur after ball 1.
Those are pretty high stats.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is, whoop.
Hang on, folks. We're coming.
Okay, we good?
Yep.
Okay.
That's all it is.
This is what a box fastball looks like.
Put together offense in that of the Washington Nationals. He went 6 shutout last time against them.
And this is a half box fastball.
Pitch, double to left center field and hit a fly ball to center.
And this is an elevated fastball. And you can see the stats there. Fastball up, batting average, 216. Fastball down, 283. 331 on base versus 384. 344 slug versus 409. Highest exit speed and most home runs are on balls down. Swings and misses on fastballs up 11%, down 4%. That's Jeff Francis.
Mm-hmm.
2. Going all the way back to 2002. The last time he had given up one was 2 years ago. To the
Maddox must have known a lot of this stuff, before he even came out.
Well, intuitively, he knew.
Yeah.
He knew by just his experience. But the interesting thing is that, major league pitchers who are the best target hitters in the world, they only hit their target 24% of the time with fastballs.
Wow.
And when I say 24, a target miss is 4 inches or more. And so, obviously there's room for improvement.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about elevated fastballs, that the game is being played north and south,
Mm-hmm.
and it's more location over stuff. But it can't be so high that it's totally non-competitive, where it's a ball out of your hand, and because it's hard to recover from big misses. Location dependent on the swing arc of the hitter. The belt line is generally the bottom of the elevated fastball, and with the letters being the top. And high spin rate or high velocity is not an absolute must. Now, here are 5 guys: Hendricks, Rourke, Greinke, Ryu, and Nola. And the only guy that has average spin rate average is on a 4-seam is like 2250. All these guys are below average spin rate. The average fastball velocity in the big leagues is 93.3. And the only guy that's average there is Rourke. But this is just a series of high fastballs.
And a swing and a miss.
88.
Strikes out Eric Dames. Got him with a fastball there.
And I watch Hendricks all the time here in Chicago. It is amazing. I wish people would watch him more often.
There's Rourke.
Striking out guys at 88, 86, 85. I've seen it.
Here's Greinke.
2-2. Judge goes around,
Big target
and that
miss
ends the inning. That's a good job by Greinke to get through the Yankees quickly. Martin wants the fastball up. Here it comes, and it gets Cooper swinging. 3-2.
The reality is that 100% of swings and misses are underneath the ball. So going up always gives you that much more room for him to miss underneath the ball. And then here's our low slot guys, these sidearm guys. We tend to think that, they can only pitch down. But to offside hitters do not, they look down and they're really committed to the ball down, and you throw a fastball up and invariably they swing and miss.
Joe Smith saves the day with his 3rd save of the year.
And then this is an elevated going in on hitters' hands. And this is pitching inside for strikes. And one of the things here, when you go in kind of belt line and above, hitters have a hell of a time trying to keep this pitch fair. And this is not about max velocity, which is when kids throw, young guys, when they throw inside, they're scared. And so they throw it 100% and they're out of control and the command is bad. But one thing you got to remember, when you're going in, if you're going to miss in. You miss out over the plate, and that can be in hitter's nitro zone. You can be backing up bases in a hurry.
Notice the catcher's glove, man, all the way on the ground.
Right hand on his hand is there room. Kevin Kuzman off his air. Third baseman Rosales in on the grass.
Okay. And this is kind of a new thing that I've just kind of noticed, and we did some stats on it. This is inside edge, that overhanging breaking balls don't get hit. Breaking balls that are up out of the strike zone. I'm not talking about hanging breaking balls that are in the strike zone. And I asked Ken Drain at Inside Edge to run some numbers for me and look at the batting average on overhangers and slugging percentage. And I think that maybe these are not by design, but eventually guys are going to do it by design. And I'm not suggesting that this is a pitch that you develop, but after you develop your breaking ball down, that it's not bad. Because what happens is hitting coaches, they tell their hitters what? Hey, if you see it high, let it fly. And so they see that high breaking ball, and then they throw out a swing plane to lift it, and it stays up, and they swing and miss. This is Rich Hill, and he does it by design. He'll throw breaking balls up by design, and they get popped up or swung at and missed all the time. And they can't believe it. They get so frustrated.
Yeah, I figure. I mean, if you're going to miss high with the curveball, miss low.
Back to back.
But he's doing it because he's trying to do it.
Yeah. Wow.
Here's that we talk about uncomfortable at-bats, and this is how you create an uncomfortable at-bat. You pressure the hitter with 70+% strikes, 65% first pitch strikes, backup strikes with strikes, get to 2 strikes in a hurry. The major league batting average with 2 strikes in the National League is 184. So I want to get to 2 strikes as fast as I can. What happens to young pitchers, they throw strike 1, and then all of a sudden they break out their Vulcan death pitch that they can't throw for a strike, but it's nasty. Now it's 1-1. They let the guy back in the count. Then pitching inside for strikes. Okay, moving the hitter's feet, pitching inside for balls below their shoulders, ability to cross count. This is what you alluded to before, off-speed pitches and fastball counts. Common ball flight. This is Perry Husband stuff. I'm sure you've had him on where let's say fastball in and 3/4 breaking ball share the same tunnel, halfway up to the plate, even farther, and the hitters can't see what it is. And now this is a new one where pitchers are varying their delivery tempo, kind of like Johnny Cueto, where they get the little shimmy or they'll roll through, and quick tempo also is part of that, working really fast. Here's some uncomfortable at bats.
They also being that more and more.
Called upon Brandon Go.
Well, one of the reasons why he's able to do that.
Okay, here's the combinations that we were talking about before. I'm going to go through this, and then I'm going to stop and open up for questions, and then we can go wherever you want to go after that. We talked about in the upper left-hand corner, my upper left-hand corner, which I think is yours too, where it says tilt. Tilt would be a fastball in from a right-hander and maybe a fastball away. Might be a breaking ball away. It might be a cutter in from a lefty and a changeup away, or a 2-seam fastball away. That would be tilting. And usually with the amateur pitchers, this is kind of an 0-2. We're trying to get the guy out here with his first pitch, but if we don't, we want to heighten his awareness and heighten it and change his attention zone inside, then we beat him away. Then the other one is maybe we go low and away to get the hitter to lean out over the plate, and then we come back and go up and in. Okay, on the below that, an I switch double, where I go fastball up and then maybe fastball or breaking ball down. A lot of times, guys with down breaking balls or splitters will throw that fastball up, and then they'll throw that high curveball, the downer curveball that kind of starts in that same tunnel, and the hitter thinks it's a fastball and he swings at it and misses it, or even a fastball down. And because sometimes hitters, they get on to what you're doing, and then they'll anticipate, oh, he threw me a high fastball, now he's going to throw me a breaking ball, and maybe I throw him a fastball down and it just surprises him. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, or maybe top right-hand corner, we go 4-seam fastball away and then come back with a 2-seam fastball that comes back on the corner. Now, this is advanced stuff. And when I start showing you what it looks like, guys are going to be frustrated and say, well, I'll never be able to do that. But this is the end of the rainbow. This is the light at the end of the tunnel. This is what big league pitching is, where eventually you develop these skills. Some guys do it faster, some guys not so fast, and some guys never. Then the double in the lower right-hand corner, I throw a fastball in, and now they've seen me tilt. So now they're thinking, oh, fastball in, now he's going to go away from me, and they start to dive into the pitch, and you come back and you throw a fastball in, and you freeze them. And then this one right in the middle is a fastball at the belt line, and then kind of a back foot slider that follows the same line as the fastball in. The one thing that we think about on that back foot slider is aiming for their front foot so that we don't leave it up in the air and in that down and in nitro zone for left-handed hitters. Okay, so here's Papelbon and Jay Payton or Yachty. So he gives him a facial there, and then fastball away. Look at it again. In the second one, just watch his front hip give after this pitch. Now watch the front hip. See that little flinch there?
Yep.
Okay. Now here's a reverse, and he heightens awareness, fastball in, then he goes fastball away. The first one's okay. The second one with Roy Oswald is much better, and with Josh Hamilton. So now we got him out over the plate.
Later on tonight, San Francisco's in.
And now the up Fastball up and in. That was Oswald. Now here's Jay Payton. Fastball away. You see him diving. Now he's going to dive and lean, and he's going to throw it in on his hands. And
He rolls
got
that
it
one up
by
the middle. Tejada gets the hop. Good.
all right, this is Todd Wellmeyer against Willie Mopena, and he's going to throw him a fastball in off the plate, and then Willie's going to lean out over the plate a little bit more, and he's going to freeze him on the next pitch. Maybe it was a strike, maybe not.
Show them that a little off the strike zone or a little on the strike zone, depending on your perspective. Fastball up and in, get.
So you see how that buckled him. Now this is Chan Ho Park. This is stupid right here. He's going to throw him a 94-mile-an-hour cut fastball in. Then he's going to come back and throw him a hip shot fastball that starts on the same line as the first one.
One of three here, so they split 10 times. This year, only 7. 1 and 2. Got it.
So as a catcher on that one, he started the target at the hitter's front hip probably. Now here's a double away. This is a very interesting one. He's going to start out with a 2-seam fastball that runs off the plate. Then he's going to come back and throw a 4-seam fastball that has no run, perfectly straight backspin that the hitter is going to take because he's anticipating the ball's going to run off the plate again.
In the 9th.
So there's running fastball. Now he's going to freeze him on this one. But that was the same line. The second one was the same line as the first one, but it didn't have that little tailing movement. Okay. Now this one here, this is Johan Santana and Chris Kost, and he's going to double him up inside. And again, going inside, it's more about location than stuff. Here's the first one. He's going to buckle him in, and he gaps his arms, or I'm sorry, he leans him back. And here's the second one. This time he's going to gap him in, and it's going to back up over the plate. Okay, that's pitching 101.
Yeah.
This is Cliff Lee, and Cliff Lee featured a 4-seam fastball and a good downer curveball, and he's going to throw a fastball up, and then the hitter's anticipating a breaking ball down, but he throws him a fastball down, and he just screws him up, and he can't pull the trigger.
In the games, they don't try to do it in batting practice. They get hard enough. That's what I was saying. That supply enough power.
3-2 pitch. Swung.
And here's Andy Pettit, and this is Cutter, and this is Jay Payton, and Jay Payton swings at this like it's a elevated fastball out over the plate, and what's going to happen, it's going to cut in on his hands. And you want this thing, you want to have this is probably, for me, the toughest pitch in baseball to hit.
Babe hit the very first one in the very first game. Pettit. Babe hit the very first one in the very first game.
And then here's some slider options. I can backdoor it, throw it on the outside part of the plate, corner. I can belt line it. I can throw it on the back foot, or I can throw it front door. Now this one is supposed to be belt line, and I think he leaves it out over the plate a little bit, but it's up enough, and it was spin, and he was looking fastball that he took it. We'd like to have it a little farther in. This is going to be backdoor, where it catches just the outside part of the plate late, starts off the plate, and the hitter gives up on it. Okay. Then this is Jeff Weaver, and this is more of a 3/4 breaking ball, but back foot. Okay. And then Craig Kimbrell, and he's going to throw a front door breaking ball.
Just enough so it's not really down and in. It's off the plate.
Just some stats on pitching in and the batting averages.
Just enough so it's not really down and in. It's off the plate.
Okay. All right. I'm going to stop right there, Pete. And
Perfect. Go ahead. If you don't need it, go ahead and take off screen share.
Okay. Let me see here.
That was fantastic. And I love the statistics because it could really open up some players and pitchers' minds and what they're doing. Couple things, Jerry. You've been great. This has been outstanding. When you're talking about a young coach who maybe doesn't have all the stats, where would he start off when it comes to hitters, understanding how to pitch to certain hitters?
Well, there are all kinds of stats out there. There's so much stuff on the internet. Baseball Savant has all kinds of material, fan graphs or baseball prospectus, or just do a Google search. You can get info. You'd be surprised how much info that there is out there.
What about if now I'm going into a game, right? We don't see the players as often. I might be a high school coach, and you're trying to prepare your pitchers to pitch to certain hitters and react to those hitters also, like you said, see what happens and then make an adjustment. Where do you start with, because you don't have the statistics on that particular hitter? Where do you start? Where's the best place to start?
Start with your pitcher. Pitch call to your
strength.
Pitch call to your pitcher's strength. If you see anything during the game and your pitcher has the ability, let's say this guy's really bad breaking ball hitter, and your pitcher has the ability to throw breaking balls for strikes, maybe that changes the scenario.
And I think, am I correctly, I think a lot of the young players really give it up a lot easier. They show it a lot more than you would a major league player.
Yeah, it's often a lot more obvious. And we have so much data on hitters based on their minor leagues and all the videos stuff that's available, and using True Media. If you go into True Media, it's got oodles and oodles of data and charts, and you can't not have the information. But you got to be careful. Got to be careful, because sometimes more is less.
Yeah, and depending on the level also, I mean, and if you have a lot of information, but you've got a lot of young kids, that could be a little dangerous sometimes.
I think the most important thing for young kids is to pitch with confidence and play with confidence overall, but pitch with confidence. And sometimes when you start talking about scouting reports, it becomes big them and little me. And, hey, man, you're the house. The house always wins. Go out there and win.
Great point. And also the stances, I know you showed them. Are they particular, like you said, to the catcher? Because there's several stances that you showed. When do you know when to use those?
Well, I just, more than anything else, especially if it's a one-off and you're playing a team one time or whatever, I'm pretty much gonna see how they swing and not worry about their stances. Now, if a guy's way off the plate and he's pulling off, hey, man, you can throw a ball on the outside part of the plate. This guy's got no chance. He's scared to death. And or this guy's right on top of the plate and he's going to jam himself. But again, sometimes, the best strategy is to put your catcher right over the middle of the plate and aim for that, and the ball's never going to end up there anyway. So,
and to review.
Pitching behind and walking people on the amateur level is what gets you into trouble.
And also just to review a second here on the particular catcher stances, like you said, you're comfortable with the one knee, depending on the type of player also, if he can handle it, you're making adjustments. Where do you start? Where would you start a young kid? Just a basic stance to start with and then move from there?
I think I'd start a young guy, and people are going to laugh and say, oh, this guy's lost it. I think I'd start young guys on one knee, because they're so relaxed and they're so tension-free on one knee. They're going to be able to catch the ball a lot better on one knee, and teach them how to block from one knee and teach them how to throw from one knee. And I think that if you do that, you'll find that they're going to be a lot better, especially the young guys that are all over the place.
And Jerry, you were talking about experience here. You've gone through all this. You've used different stances. You've made changes. So when you're talking about one knee going to block, you've shown that you can block from one knee, and you've also shown that you can throw a runner out just as quick and maybe quicker from one knee.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll give you a little story. Quick little story. We had a 19-day instructional league, and we took our catchers, and 90% of the time we worked on receiving. And of that 90%, probably 80% of the time was one knee. Now, some of our guys received on one knee, but never threw off of one knee. Some of our guys received off one knee, but had not had a lot of blocking reps off of one knee. So what we did is we worked on our right knee, we worked off our left knee, we worked off of a kind of a halfway stance and a kickstand stance, and we let them get a lot of reps in, and then they could figure out where they were most comfortable, understanding that the priority is on the pitch. And we told them, in a game, you go where you're most comfortable, and then also the situation will dictate where you're most comfortable. But the fact of the matter is, if you really think about it, the biggest rub is the blocking piece, especially lateral blocking. And what happens where guys, when you're down on a knee, you're already down. You're never going to be late to the ball.
Yeah.
And what we see is the guys that have trouble blocking. And what happens is, anytime a guy is down on a knee and a ball's thrown in the dirt and it's not blocked, everybody gets their panties in a wad and says, well, if he were up, he'd get. Well, the chances are that he wouldn't get to the ball whether he were up or down. It's not a blockable pitch. And so I would say of the 10 catchers we had there, all 10 of them became one knee catchers more than when they started camp, and some of them 100%. We're seeing it more and more in the big leagues. Guys are in throwing situations, guys are catching on a knee.
It's interesting because I remember Manny Sanguillen going down to one knee, remember with the spread out leg, and
he was a kickstand locked in, and he was catching a staff with very good command. They didn't have a lot of target misses.
Now, what about the other day? I saw the Kansas City catcher. I can't remember the name right now, but he was down, and I don't remember what stance he was in. But, sometimes the ball comes so fast, you're not able to block it. So you see him reach out, and he didn't give. He just kind of caught it on a short hop. There's times you see that, and guys say, well, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be trying to block that. But necessarily, you're not going to get to that ball sometimes.
Well, when a ball is 95 miles an hour, a fastball, and they yank it, or they're late and it runs to their arm side, I don't think you're going to be able to get your body out there and block it. Now, if it's straight on, you can kick back and block it. But if it's yanked to one side or the other, you're going to we call it an emergency block. Just try and lead with your glove and try and get your glove there as best you can. And sometimes picking it is the best option. To think that you can get your body over there and block it, especially if it's if you're sitting in and they yank the ball away, you just have to, do the best you can. And blocking is probably not an option. They have to pick that pitch.
And I bring that up because that's something, one, you got to practice, and if you're going to do it in a game, you're going to have to practice that also. And two, young kids, the speed is the same for them. You got a kid throwing 75 miles an hour, to a young kid, it's the same difference. So we need to practice that also, right?
Well, all I want to do is when those coaches say, man, you got to block that ball. I say, okay, hey, here's some gear, put the gear on.
Yeah, you try it.
Let me see. It looks a lot, it sounds like you should be able to do it, and it looks a lot easier than it is. But the reality is you're talking about 4/10 of a second, and you're expecting a ball in one area and it goes in another area and it's got cut or sink, and I'm not being making excuses for catchers, being an apologist for the catchers, because my feeling is, hey, that's your job. Runners on base, your job is to block the ball or stop the ball and keep that guy from advancing. But runners are really doing a good job now, reading balls in the dirt, anticipating them, reading the ball out of the pitcher's hand, and so it's not easy.
All right, Jerry, we'll take a question, one question, Facebook, then we'll close it off with any other comment you want to mention to close it off. But this goes back to what we were talking about. You mentioned about 80% of the pitchers in the big leagues don't look at the glove. And the question is, with young kids, what should we be teaching them?
Well, I didn't say 80% of the guys in our camp, 8 out of 10 of them the glove was not that important. I think a target. And I don't think it necessarily needs to be the glove, but that they're locked in on a target. Now, some of them are better with a bigger target. We like to think, well, a small target. If you're throwing the ball at the barn, you can hit it. If you're throwing the ball at the barn door, you may not be able to hit it. So sometimes having a bigger, and again, you just got to find out by communicating with your players, find out where their best command is relative to a target. and where they're looking.
Yeah, instead of us trying to tell them what to do, it may be what's easier for them. Sometimes it might be the catcher's right knee, left knee. It could be a lot of different things.
Right. Could be his chest protector. Could be his
Yeah.
mask. Could be the inside of his glove. Small. And the old saying is small target, small miss. Well, that's not always the case. If I'm hit the barn, I can hit the barn every time. And if I'm aiming for the barn door, I can hit the barn as well. But again, you just have to. It's a dialogue that you're having with your players, and finding out what's best for each player.
Jerry, when it comes to catching, last thing, what is there something new you're working on or trying to research more? Yeah,
good question. For me, with all the new diagnostic balls where and again, this is something we did in instructional, which I thought was really good. We put all our catchers on Rapsodo so that we got their spin rate and we got their spin axis and we got their spin efficiency. And we were using that Diamond Kinetic ball tracker and throwing it into a net. And so we'd find out and then we use our Edgertronic cameras. So we're working a lot with our catchers on where they have their fingers on the ball that produces the best backspin. We want as true a spin as possible. We'd like to have four seam, 100% spin efficiency, because then just like those pitchers that have spin efficiency and a high spin rate, the ball stays up. When you're throwing the ball 127 feet 6 inches and you have a little off spin, the ball's going to sink or tail. It's going to slow down. It's going to move a lot because distance magnifies bad rotation. So we're working a lot with our catchers on rotation. Now for the amateur guys, what I would do with all my throwers is I'd get a Sharpie, a black Sharpie, and put a stripe across the four seams, and every day they throw with that Sharpie and try and keep that stripe clear. And then if you can do some videoing with your iPhone and see where their fingers are and see the angle of the ball relative to their forearm and how it's released, again, throwing the ball with good rotation will make up for lack of arm strength because it'll have more inline carry. So we're spending a lot more time with our catchers trying to diagnose throwing issues based on rotation.
Wow, and that's where technology is really coming in handy, simply because, remember, again, in the old days, you were teaching that, but yet you didn't have anything to show them, and now they could actually see their spin rate and see when it increases, which then gives them improvement.
Right, and we saw where if we had a little better grip on the ball or a little different spread between our fingers, that we get truer spin and higher spin rate. I think the next thing is that someone develops a force plate, a baseball that's a force plate, so we can see where the guys that throw the ball the best with the best spin rate and the best true spin, what kind of finger pressure they're putting on the ball with their thumb and index finger and middle finger.
Wow. This is going to be awesome. Can't wait for the new stuff, Jerry. Last comment. You've been fantastic. You've gone way past your time. Last comment, just to your coaches about catching, anything you want to throw out there, any last minute advice?
Well, if you're going to win a game, if the scoreboard's important, there's three guys that are going to really factor into it. The pitcher, the catcher, and the umpire. And the catcher impacts both the pitcher and the umpire. So get an athlete behind the plate. Don't put the little pudgy guy like me behind the plate. Get yourself an athlete back there, and it'll benefit him, but it'll also benefit your team. And then also, anybody wants to get a hold of me, you got all my contact information. I'd be glad to, if I have time, to answer any questions you have.
Absolutely. We're going to put that on our show notes. We're going to put it on our emails that we send. So we'll have all that information out. And, what's awesome about all this is that Jerry's always out there trying to help everybody.
Hey,
Jerry, go ahead.
On the email, let me give you a better email if you want to write this down. I need to change that. That's an old PowerPoint. It's jwbbslo1@gmail.com.
Okay, and I'll make sure we get that out to everybody. That'd be fantastic. Jerry, can't thank you enough, man. Thanks for all your time, and God bless you. Good luck. Hopefully you get on the field soon.
Yeah, I'm with you. Thanks, Pete. Enjoyed it. Good luck to everybody out there.
All right, Jerry Weinstein, and this is Pete Caliendo, Baseball Outside the Box. Thanks, everybody on Facebook for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thanks for your questions. Don't forget, thank you to Brian Crock, our producer with Lineup Media Group, and special thanks to everybody in the U.S. and around the world for checking us out daily. We really appreciate it. Don't forget, just do us one favor. It's all we ask. Go to YouTube, subscribe, send it out, share it with others, and help us get the show out. We appreciate it. God bless everybody. We'll see you on the next show, everybody. So remember, Pete Caliendo, your host. See you tomorrow.